Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Grandma Has ADHD, the podcast where we explore what it means to discover ADHD later in life. And trust me, we share some laughs, some insights, and sometimes a little too much information. I'm your host, Jami Shapiro, and whether you're newly diagnosed, just starting to connect the dots, or you've been on this journey for a while, you're in the right place. Each week, I sit down with incredible guests, coaches, advocates, therapists, and fellow ADHDers who understand what it's like to navigate this beautifully chaotic ADHD brain of ours. And hey, if you like what you hear today, I'd love for you to join the Sparkler Society. It's a space where you can navigate ADHD with others who are new to discovering it too, because nobody should have to figure this out alone. So grab your coffee or whatever keeps you focused today, get comfortable, and let's dive in. Ever wondered why helping a loved one declutter feels like speaking different languages? I did, especially with my mom. It wasn't until I founded Silver Linings Transitions, helping San Diego seniors organize and move for over a decade, that I discovered why. We all experience clutter differently, and for those of us with ADHD, it's a whole other world. If you are listening in the San Diego area and feeling stuck with moving, paperwork, photos, or home organization, our team at Silver Linings Transitions gets it. We understand ADHD's unique challenges, and we won't just help you get organized. We'll create sustainable systems that finally stick. Schedule a consultation with our team today at 760-522-1624. That's 760-522-1624, or find us at silverliningstransitions.com. Hey there, everybody. I am so excited to introduce today's guest, someone who truly embodies what it means to live life wide open, ADHD and all. Linda Roggoli is an author, coach, retreat facilitator, and self-proclaimed AD diva who spent years alternating between denial, relief, and sorrow about her ADHD diagnosis before finally discovering something transformational. She actually likes herself, loves herself, actually. Linda's had more careers than most of us have had job interviews, from TV anchor to film critic to ad agency owner. She's piloted airlines, floated in hot air balloons, and even bought one without knowing how to fly it. But it wasn't until menopause hit and she ran to the doctor for ADHD meds that everything clicked into place. Today, Linda helps women with ADHD find their own true resonance through her work as a spiritual life coach and the founder of Garden Spirit Guesthouse Women's Retreat. She's the creator of the Women's ADHD Palooza, and she's famous for her enthusiasm, her sacred laughter, and giving hugs. Lots and lots of hugs. Linda's living proof that when you stop overcompensating and start being exactly who you are, life becomes full of grace, passion, and possibility. Please welcome the fabulous Linda Roggoli. And before you say anything, I have to say your bio reads like someone with ADHD. I had to say
it does. It does. Well, I mean, you can't hide it, right? I mean, it just sticks out everywhere.
Right. And I will say, that I'm a fan. You're definitely very, very well known in the ADHD space. And as I've, gotten into it, your name is everywhere. I believe you hosted the TAD Talks this year, which I've talked about quite a bit in my podcast. I've had several guests on and got to be on it as well. And you are absolutely a pioneer in the ADHD space, and especially for menopausal women, I believe, right? Or women 40 and over.
Yeah, absolutely.
So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. My God. Can you write all of my introductions, please? I would love that. who was that woman over there? Oh, yeah, I guess it was me. You're right. People say, oh, well, I can't tell anyone about my ADHD. I tell everyone about my ADHD. And, I just realized, I was talking to my therapist the other day. All my life, I've been willing to say, oh, look at this. The only things are wrong with me, because I wanted to be able to negate like anybody criticizing me, because I'm like, I'm going to lay it all out for you. That was before I even knew I had ADHD. Now that I have ADHD, it's kind of like, it's all out there. But one thing I never, ever do is say, don't blame me, I have ADHD. It is never an excuse for me, never. It's one of the things that makes me, well, all modesty aside, wonderful.
I love it.
Don't you just love other ADHD people? But I found out that most of my friends are ADHD, or they live in families that they tolerate and encourage ADHD. Like my best friend, her mom was bipolar and her sister's ADHD, and she's kind of the middle ground. So we've just been friends forever. So how did I get started on that topic? I do not know, but that's just the ADHD brain just going around and around and around. So when you say that I'm a pioneer, I've heard that word used a couple of times for me, and it makes me think I should get in an old wagon, covered wagon with a little bonnet and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But probably not. And you mentioned TED Talks too. I actually created TED Talks 10 years ago.
Of course you did.
Yeah. Because they were like, what are we going to do for ADHD Awareness Month? And I'm like, I don't know. TED Talks are popular. Why don't we do TED Talks, Talking ADD? So they're, instead of 18 minutes long, they're 9 minutes long, so that we can't pay attention. Exactly. So good for you for being part of TED Talks. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I loved doing it. It was great. Okay. So I always like to start the conversation with, tell me your ADHD journey and how you got to this space, because I'm sure you were not diagnosed young.
Oh gosh, no.
Given that we're part of, you're either Gen X or Boomer, as I can tell. So we girls didn't get diagnosed. So how did you get to this?
Interestingly enough, after I married I married my first husband twice. So he was my first husband and my second husband, because somehow I thought that was the way to do it. But when I married I don't like to say it my current husband, because he is the last husband, but we were not having such a good time in the early days, and we were going to a marriage counselor. For some reason, I went by myself one time, and I was just as my usual, because remember that I'm combined type ADHD.
Me too.
All women are inattentive, because, unless you happen to be one of those very, very small percentage of women who are all hyperactive, which is very unusual for women. But so I'm combined type. So all of us have inattentive ADHD. Combined type women have the added bonus of having inattentive and hyperactive on top of it. And we actually struggle a little bit even more than I'm not saying that we are, this is not a pity party, don't get me wrong here. But I guess my point is that I was, which is my impulsive hyperactive piece, right? And I was just talking. And the therapist just stopped. And when he stopped, and I kind of sat back a little bit, and he said, has anyone ever told you had ADHD? I literally laughed in his face, because my understanding of ADHD was, little boys who were twitchy and got up and ran around the classroom and were sassy and were in the principal's office all the time. And he said, and he realized he made a big mistake by saying, he kind of went, why don't you just go by a bookstore, because those days we actually went to bookstores instead of ordering online. Go by the bookstore and just pick up this book called Driven to Distraction and just see if anything resonates. Well, it was November. It was dark. I was in the Barnes and Noble store on the way home. I was not going to wait around for this. And I thought, why would I want to buy another self-help book? Because I own pretty much every single one of them. So I went to the self-help book section. I couldn't find it. I actually had to ask them at the desk where it was. And I took it home. And I didn't just take it home. I sat in the parking lot where they had those sodium lights on the parking lots, right? And I opened the book up, and I'm like reading it, and I'm like, oh my God. And I literally am reading this thing at the stoplights on the way home. It took me about 2 days to finish the whole book, and I would laugh and I would cry. And finally I told my husband, oh my God, look at this is who I am. And then he started saying to me, oh, that's your ADHD. And I'm like, oh no, you are not going to be saying that to me. That lasted 1 day. You are not going to blame me because of my ADHD. So I don't excuse it, and I don't get blamed for it either.
I have to stop and share something with you.
Please
That's
do.
what we do. So literally this morning, we are cleaning for the cleaning lady, getting everything off the counters. And so my boyfriend is helping me move things. And we have like an overpile. Actually, he does not have ADHD, but he likes to cook and has to buy every gadget. So that's another story. But there's a glass dreidel. So I'm Jewish and celebrate Hanukkah. There's a glass dreidel on the shelf where all of the stuff goes. And he sees me about to go put something on the shelf and take that down the crock pot. And he said, "Do you see that dreidel?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Because I'm trying to avoid a 20-minute catastrophe for a 5-second, so he is aware." And I'm like, "We got to write that one down." So you just pointed it out. But I remember where you were, so I will take you back.
Absolutely. It's fine. I don't remember where I was either. So we'll just forget.
You said that you brought the book home, Driven to Distraction, which by the way was also the first book that I read.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and at the back of that book, there's a list of 100 questions or 100 things that have to do with ADHD. And actually, I sat down at the Barnes & Noble and sat down. As I say, it was winter. I still had my winter coat on. I just sat one of those really nice, glossy, polished benches. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to need this. And I opened to the back where those questions were. And I went, oh, my God. And I literally was almost running to the cash register to buy it. So when I finished it, I realized, well, there were some of those people in Ned Hallowell's book. Dr. Ned Hallowell is one of the co-authors. There's some people in there that I really identified with, but a lot of them, they lost jobs and they were down on their luck. And then there was especially one woman that he had talked about, anonymously, of course, who had come in very well coiffed and everything. And she said, "Well, do I have ADHD?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am, I believe that you do have ADHD." And she said, "Okay." And she walked out. He said, "Don't you want treatment?" She goes, "No, I just needed to know." And I decided that was going to be my attitude too. If I know about it, that's just great. But I can't get diagnosed from a book. So my therapist actually sent me to one of the very few people in the entire world who dealt with ADHD adults. Yeah.
You know that voice in your head, the one that's been asking, "What's wrong with me?" for decades? What if I told you there's nothing wrong with you? What if everything you've been beating yourself up about, the clutter, the forgotten appointments, the impulse purchases, the half-finished projects, what if it all makes sense? That's why I'm introducing the Sparkler Society, a community designed specifically for women like us, women who've spent decades feeling too much and not enough at the same time. This isn't another unused or forgotten subscription. This is weekly decluttering sessions with accountability, body doubling sessions working virtually side by side with other people on unfinished projects, a craft swap to trade those abandoned projects guilt-free, and real strategies to save more than $250 a month on what we call the ADHD tax. And most importantly, it's a place to feel seen and understood. We're opening our doors to founding members in February, and we're inviting you to try everything for just $17. You'll get full access to every group feature, including our craft swap and treasure chest community pages. Then in March, you decide which features you want to keep or simply walk away if it's not your fit. The Sparkler Society is a place where your too much is just right. Visit JamiShapiro.me to become a founding member before February 28th and try all of our features for $17 until March 1st. It's time to stop apologizing for who you are and start shining. Moving can feel overwhelming, whether you're downsizing, relocating, or helping a loved one transition. There are so many decisions to make, details to handle, and emotions to navigate. At Silver Linings Transitions, we believe every move should be magical, not stressful. We're more than movers. We expertly guide you through the entire process and do our best to alleviate your concerns. From the moment we meet, you'll feel comfortable because we will listen to your needs and wants and work together to create a personalized plan that honors your memories and your cherished belongings while helping you embrace your next chapter. When selling your home is part of the journey, you may be eligible for free move services when we refer you to one of our trusted realtor partners throughout San Diego and the surrounding area. With a decade of experience working as a realtor myself, I guide our clients through the process of screening and hiring their perfect fit realtor. Then our team professionally stages your home to showcase its best features and maximize its value. We visit your new space and create a detailed floor plan, ensuring your furniture and treasured belongings will fit safely. We handle the logistics, so you don't need to worry about anything, from sorting and packing to coordinating the sale and donation of unwanted items. Our professional team uses efficient, eco-friendly bins and handles every detail with care. We coordinate with our vetted moving partners, oversee the logistics, and ensure nothing is left behind, even packing your refrigerator items. Here's where the magic happens. We don't just unpack, we recreate the feeling of home. Using photos from your previous space, we thoughtfully arrange your furniture, hang your pictures, and set up your kitchen and bathroom so everything feels familiar from day one. When you walk into your new space, it's not just moved in, it's home. Your coffee pot is ready, your favorite photos are perfectly placed, your bed is made, and your new chapter begins with comfort and joy instead of chaos. This is how Silver Linings Transitions makes moves magical. We handle the emotional lifting and the logistics so you can focus on what matters most, settling into your new home. Because every move deserves a silver lining. We paused because we were having technical issues, and we're not exactly sure where the technical problems began, but we're going to sort of pick back up with the conversation that was when you were speaking about somebody that Dr. Hollowell had written about in his book, who was, very put together, wanted to find out if she had ADHD. He said, yes, she did. And then she said, okay, fine. That's all I needed to know. And that was, I think, what you said. You're like, okay, I have ADHD, which was exactly what happened.
Well, and I wasn't sure that I had ADHD, to be honest with you. So my therapist sent me to one of the very few people in the whole United States that even dealt with ADHD as adults. And I went to him, and of course I was 15 minutes late. And because I was paying for it and I was 15 minutes later, I was talking twice as fast, right? And he would ask me one question and I would talk for 10 minutes, right? And then I would stop and he would ask me another question. And at the end of it, I said, well, I don't really have it, do I? And he said, oh yeah, probably you do. Here's a prescription for some, to me, it looked like, horrible medication. Oh my God, this is going to be addictive, all that kind of good stuff. So I walked out of there feeling very unsettled and not really completely convinced. He was convinced. I wasn't convinced. Here's the interesting thing is that one of our subsequent visits, because now I was officially diagnosed, not by any kind of test. Remember, we don't have a blood test. We don't have an MRI scan. We don't have any of that stuff to say this is ADHD. Most accurate is having an intake interview. And that's pretty much what he was doing with me, because he would ask me some questions about what was I like when I was a kid. And I was just like this. I talked a lot. I was too loud in the library when I was in elementary school. I didn't have friends because I wanted to be the leader, but nobody wanted to follow me. I mean, it was the typical kinds of things. So he was very, very clear and convinced. But in some of our subsequent conversations, he would say things like, well, how's your house? And I say, oh, it's really all messy all the time. And he goes, well, here's a list of a couple of professional organizers that I think you might enjoy working with. And I'm like, yeah, well, I can't have them over until I get my house cleaned up. So I didn't do that. And even though I had a housekeeper who would come once a week, it was like, don't touch my piles. You leave them. And they learned very quickly. You don't touch Linda's stuff, because Linda has a semi-organized way of dealing with things, right? Mm-hmm. And so about 2 years later, I actually did hire a professional organizer. And I explained to her over and over and it looks really bad. And she's like, I've seen everything, no problem. And she sat down in my husband's office and there literally was a laundry basket full of paper. And I said, we're going to work in his office because it's not fair for my stuff to be all over his office, even though my husband's OCD and he works with a microscope. He's a pathologist. So he can actually focus like this and ignore my stuff. I can't. I see all of it. I couldn't work like that. I said, we're going to take care of him first. She starts going through the laundry basket and she calls me and she goes, why is my phone number on this Post-it? It was the same Post-it that the psychiatrist had given me 2 years earlier. Oh, wow. And I looked at her and I thought, because I didn't know her very well. And finally, both of us just burst out laughing. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I've begun to look at my ADHD. But I will tell you that even diagnosed, I didn't really believe it. You know, I already had a couple of kids. I had a good marriage the third time, thank goodness. But I mean, it was fine. We built our own house. So I was like, so what if I have ADHD? This is not a big deal. And then I hit menopause. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know it was menopause, but because perimenopause for me started with just these little warm cheeks, just these little flushes during the day. And then I went off of my low dose birth control pills and all hell broke loose. Excuse my language. If you want to drop that out, that's fine. But I ran back to this doctor and I said, I need the ADHD medication right now. Like today, can I take it while I'm in your office kind of thing? And he looked at me very coolly and said, ADHD women need estrogen. Go get some. And I'm like, could you give me a little trial version right now? Because how do I go get estrogen, for God's sake? Especially you have to remember that this has been a while ago and the Women's Health Initiative had just come out and people had been dropping their hormones like flies, right? No one wanted to have anything to do with it because it could cause cancer and blah, 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 blah. Now, some 20 years later, we now know that that study was very highly flawed. Mm-hmm. And they were actually they were testing with number one, they were artificial hormones. And it was like mare's urine. So it was Premarin and it was conjugated mare urine plus a chemical that was supposed to mimic progesterone. So it was a combination. And they also started women on it when they were in their 60s, when they were mostly postmenopausal. Mm-hmm. So they probably already had some heart disease. And I found out recently that it takes 9 years for breast cancer to be diagnosed from when it actually starts in the breast, 9 years. So some of those women, even though they were screened for breast cancer before they started the whole trial, they could have already had that tiny little inkling of breast cancer, but everybody was scared out of their wits, as was I. And by that time, I had switched doctors to an interesting combination. She was a former OBGYN who apparently had some kind of an injury, and then she retrained as a psychiatrist. It took her a year to convince me to at least try some kind of estrogen replacement. It used to be called HRT, hormone replacement. Now they don't call it that anymore. For around menopause, they call it menopause hormone therapy. That's what they, MTH. And so I finally did. She said, Linda, this is a quality of life issue here. It felt like I was having 60 hot flashes a day. I probably wasn't, but I was having it. I carried around the little thing to put around my neck that was like full of bubbly water, that cooling evaporative thing. I mean, I didn't carry around one of those little fans because that's just too much trouble for me to handle. But it was covers off, cover on, all that kind of stuff. So I was so grateful because right before I found out I was even menopausal, I had been on low-dose birth control pills. Mm-hmm. And that was to control, because when you get into perimenopause, everything kind of gets exaggerated. And my migraine, I had hormonally related migraines that I now look back and know that that's what it was. And right before my period, I had irregular periods. This is maybe TMI, but nonetheless, it's not sorry. So because my periods were so irregular, I knew when I had my first pregnancy that they said, I think your due date's here. And I'm like, no, it's not. You have no idea when I'm going to have this baby, nor do I, because I don't even know when my periods are going to happen. But I knew that when I got to the point of feeling like the sky was falling, it was Chicken Little running around, oh my God. Then I got really depressed and I got that headache. Then I knew that my period was going to happen the next day or so. So I even went in for typical migraines. And, ADHD women tend to have more migraines, regular and hormonally related migraines. But I didn't know any of that stuff then. And they didn't either. And that's the key here, is that we were kind of the cutting edge, like we were breaking the ice, right? We were the icebreakers in front of the big boat that was behind us, because we didn't really know what was going on, and it was just trial and error. I'm so lucky. Oh, I wanted to tell you one thing about that. So I went off of my low dose birth control pills, which smoothed me out beautifully. And I took them. I didn't stop to have a period, even though it's not really a period, it's just bleeding, because that completely erases all your natural rhythms. But I just was on them continuously. And I said, well, am I in menopause? And she said, well, I don't know. Why don't you just stop taking those birth control pills? And I did. And I just fell off the edge. I mean, and I was in bed, seriously. And I went to Macy's, and the woman at Macy's said, okay, well, here, we're going to add you to this contest list. What's your address? And I went, I'm sorry, I can't remember anything anymore. And she leans over the counter and she goes, that's okay, honey, it'll get better. Thank God, she was a little older than I was. And I thought, when? Could it be tomorrow? What I found out, interestingly enough, is that menopausal hormone therapy is actually lower doses of both estrogen and progesterone than low dose birth control pills or higher dose birth control pills. Yeah. So I felt much better that I was actually going from a level of here to here. And my brilliant OBGYN/psychiatrist, I don't know if she knew what she was doing or not, but I pray that she did. She started me on an estrogen patch. And that turned out to be the best thing ever. It was accidentally the right thing to do. I knew I did not want to take a pill because I didn't want it to metabolize through my liver. I'd read enough about it to know what kind of things could happen there. And I have to say that I didn't want to read anything about menopause. Unlike, I'm a former reporter, I'm a former journalist, so I want to know everything before I do anything, right? I'm doing research. I'm buying books. Back in those days, our internet was not quite as robust as it is now. And I was like, no, I don't want to know anything. In fact, when my son said to me, Mom, are you doing that old thing? I wanted to do it even less. Let me just tell you, that old thing, give me a break here. So bottom line was, I put that patch on, and in 2 days, I was like back to myself again.
I've got mine on.
Yeah, you do? Good for you. Well, I'm going to tell you that I've been using, none of this is your doctor telling you what to do. I am sharing my experience with what works for me. Mm-hmm. And I have now been on that estrogen patch. At first, it was unopposed estrogen because there's a real true pioneer in women's and girls' ADHD, Dr. Patricia Quinn, and out of the DC area here in the United States, who said that women with ADHD need unopposed estrogen because progesterone causes foggy brain. And progesterone's there to kind of calm you down. It's one of those things that's not going to give you any extra focus. As a matter of fact, you can actually, get you a little out of focus, because that's what it wants to do, is make you calm. So I used unopposed estrogen for years and years and years. And the way I did it safely was that once a year, I would have a vaginal ultrasound, and it's just what it sounded. It was intravaginal, and they would make sure that my endometrium wasn't doing any kind of weird growth things, because the danger is endometrial cancer if you just have estrogen on board. But in those days, it was like, oh no, this is the worst thing you could possibly do. Now what they found is that, particularly with women who don't have a uterus, that's where the endometrium is, it's really safe to take estrogen alone. And they find that it even has not positive, but there's a neutral effect on breast cancer and some of the other things that we really worry about and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go into all those details right now, because you can read that research anywhere. And I have all that research somewhere, but I can't quote it back to you immediately. Sure. So the bottom line is that I still, even to this day, so I've been on estrogen, and I added progesterone about 5 to 7 years ago, and it's natural progesterone. I added it just because I still do have a uterus, even though it's not doing anything these days, mm-hmm. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. But I was kind of insulted one time when the woman who was doing the ultrasound said, well, that's just what we want. Your little ovaries are all shrunk down to nothing. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Okay, don't tell me that anymore. I don't want to hear it. So now I have been on that estrogen patch for 22 years. And wow. What they say now is, and I want to be real clear with people, is that if you're going to do hormone therapy around menopause, you need to start within 5 to 6 years of when your last period was. And that is, if you start later, like at 10 years after your last period, like if you're in your 60s, like with the research that was done, you can actually have worse results. It can actually cause those serious things we've worried about. But I happened to do it within a year. And someone said, well, maybe you should go off of it. And I said, no one's taking my estrogen away from me because I don't have chin hairs. And but I do still have, occasionally I still do have hot flashes. And one of the reasons is that I've always used brand name estrogen patch. Vivel Dot is what they called it. Well, they discontinued it in 2023. I didn't know that, and no wonder I was having so much trouble getting it. So now I'm using a generic version, and I'm not sure it's working as well. So I'm going to talk to my gynecologist to see if maybe I can go back on a name brand version that is supposed to be equivalent of that one that I used to use. But my ADHD journey took a big turn when I began learning more about my ADHD, which is post-menopause, at menopause and a little after. And then when I closed my advertising agency and I kind of swerved into coaching and doing retreat facilitation and said, you know what, spiritual life coaching is amazing and I love doing it, but there's this big opening with ADHD women. When I started doing this, there were literally 2 books about ADHD and women. One was Sari Solden and one was Terry Matlin, it was more of a how-to book rather than the information about ADHD women. And I said, I'm a marketing person. There's this big gap here, and that's what I'm going to step into. So when I did that, that's when my information about ADHD just exploded, and I trained for ADHD coaching and I don't know about you, but I have a lot of books that I have read halfway through.
Oh,
like, the bookmarks in the middle, because then they get to the boring stuff about here's how to fix it or what to do. I want to read the anecdotes. And when I started reading a lot of those and went, oh, you mean that was ADHD? It's not just I'm an idiot or I'm too much or I'm too intense or I'm too loud. It was just ADHD. And it's kind of like in the old days, there was a commercial that said, I could have had a V8. And that's kind of how I felt about ADHD. It's like, it's just ADHD. Not that I'm still not frustrated by it. I'm actually going to a gathering that Sari Solden is doing in December of 2025. I don't know when this will air, but just so people aren't looking for it in February. And she asked questions about, well, what is it what's still a struggle for your ADHD? What are some things that you really think that are attractive about your ADHD? And for me, it's all about creativity. And the struggle is still follow through and finishing things up. I needed to there was a deadline at 1 minute before midnight last night that I missed because I kept saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then I forgot one time more than I remembered. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And okay, this is a great time for me to ask you the button question, which I have to tell you that I did steal from Penn Holderness from last year's conference when when he talked about whether he would push the button and not have ADHD.
Yeah.
I would love to know if you could push the button and you never had it. It's gone. You never have it again.
No, I'd never push it.
Do you know, I have to tell you that I just did my first interview with, Ryan Mayer, Coach Ryan Mayer, was the first person to say that he would push the button.
Really? Oh, wow. I know a lot of people who would push the button. I used to host an on-site live, it was pre-COVID, meetup group, and we had 650 people on that group, and that's been 10 years ago.
Wow.
And you know that we only had 4 people who showed up, of course.
On time, right?
Oh, no, I had people, we were into 9 o'clock. I had people show up at 8:45. So I'm like, welcome, come on in. But I once in a great while, I'll do a thing where I will have them fill out, what do you love about your ADHD? Tell me. And there were people who say, there's nothing I love about it. I hate every minute of it and I want to be normal.
My oldest child hates it. And that's how I came into my own ADHD discovery.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Your child? Yeah.
I want to share with you a little bit about me and my background, because I think it's going to help your followers and listeners, because you touched on a few things.
Yeah.
So my journey began about 11 or 12 years ago when I started a senior move management business in San Diego. Have you heard of NASM, the National Association of Senior? Now we've added and specialty move management.
Yes. No, but I'm loving to hear about it. Thank you.
So I actually I'm the vice president of the board of directors of. It's more than national, but what we started as is helping seniors when they were downsizing from their homes and they were having decisions about what they were going to keep and what they were going to not keep and what they were going to do with what they weren't going to keep. And then the packing and the unpacking and the floor planning. So can you hear ADHD and all of that, how that would be
planning, organization, decisions.
Right. And then, so I started that business and I discovered that I had ADHD after starting that business. And then at that point, my oldest child comes to me. They're in my school. My child's non-binary. They come to me in middle school. They say, Mom, I think I have ADHD. I want to be evaluated. And I said, you've been reading since you were 3. Because my half brother had hyperactive ADHD in the 80s, had to be put on Ritalin. And I'm like, you don't have ADHD. So as I'm sitting in the psychiatrist's office with Will, I said, and answering the questions on, the assessment, I said, I'm answering more questions for me. Do I have it? Like 45 at the time.
Yeah.
And so P.S., I had more of it because I am also combined type. Will is an attentive. And I knew my dad had it because you could see it and my brother had it. And, I didn't even know that there was a genetic link, but I knew. Sure. And then, but here I am I'm starting a business. Oh, I'm going through a divorce. I'm raising 3 children. And so just like you, I'm like, okay, ADHD goes on a side. Like I didn't really spend, but when I realized, so I actually also became a member of the ICD. So that's another really thing to know about for your listeners. Those are people who, it's the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. And those are people who struggle with chronic disorganization, whether it's ADHD, it's aging, it could be grief because they've, just had a death. I mean, it could be a life cycle event, but it's someone that just, and I call it like, I just can't seem to get it together. And that was my whole experience. And I would hire an organizer as well, by the way, but then it would always go back to what it was. And that's why it's so important that somebody works with someone like from the ICD who understands ADHD and, and what we need to know about the reason that we have the piles. So I just wanted to bring your attention to those 2 things. But really what lit me up was I was actually listening to a podcast as I became a level 2 specialist in ADHD with the ICD. And I happened to be listening to a podcast about migraine headaches and fibromyalgia being really common in women with ADHD. And I called my mom, who, by the way, had stacks everywhere. And I used to do downsizing presentations. And I would tell people, my mom has hoarding disorder, because if you had looked at my mom's house, that's what you would have seen. She didn't have the dead animals and all the, stuff. She wasn't going to be on television, but all over her furniture, she couldn't use her furniture for what it was intended for. And I called her, I'm like, Mom, I have some good news for you. I don't think you have hoarding disorder. I think you have ADHD.
Bingo. Yeah.
So I promptly read Dr. Kathleen Nadeau's book, and I'm super proud that she was the very first person to say yes to my podcast, because she loves the title Grandma Has ADHD, because she is now out there saying, hey, it doesn't go away with age. There are new challenges that are going to come with aging. And then I started to look at all of these clients who I had missed, who had the same clutter that my mom had. And now I'm out there educating older adults about ADHD, and they are having no idea that that's what's going on. And they're opening up to this conversation. And so I'm advocating for the older women. And I say women also, just because, to your point, people kind of knew the hyperactive, that was identifiable, but it was the inattentive that kind of flew under the radar. Yeah. But I also will say that that women, and I felt this, and maybe you did too, because my first marriage didn't make it. I could not carry the lion's responsibility of running a household while also running my life. And I've talked to people on my podcast who have a father with ADHD, but that didn't seem to be as big of a deal as the mom. And it didn't have the impact. And I actually just today read something about cortisol levels are higher in women with clutter than they are in men. I think it's because we carry that responsibility just from traditional values. And that's just the world that our generations live in, which is fell on the women to make sure that the house was maintained and the kids were getting their homework done, and, and then throw in some ADHD. And I do think that a lot of us women might have been more impacted as a result. So that's I just wanted to kind of put that out there for you to understand a little bit about my work.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you're involved with ICD, because I have spoken to ICD twice in the last few years. Actually, I was a member of ICD, and I was going to mention hoarding, because they actually have I love the fact that in ICD, they say that the hoarding doesn't have to be the same in every room, because I can have one room that stays pristine because we don't use the dang room. And then I have another room that I have people when in my organizing programs, because I've run organizing programs since the beginning of COVID. I started my organizing programs 2 weeks after the shutdown. People thought I was brilliant, but it was an accident. It's because I'd done an organizing program for Attitude Magazine and said, well, let's just do something so I can clean up my own space. But I have people in my program who say, I can't go into the scary room because it's like everywhere else is okay, but the scary room, no, we can't go there. So I said, somebody said to me, well, I just don't know what to do about it. And so we have things called blitzes. We do live organizing together 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. And I said, darling, use the damn blitzes. And she was like, oh, she was like this moment, like mind-blowing moment. So thank you for that. I appreciate that background, and I'm so glad to hear that you are level 2. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. One thing I love about ICD is that they actually do, as you just mentioned, training people as professional organizers who get into people's homes, because that's a very intimate space. And I tell the story about one of my earliest clients she was a trust fund baby, and her mom was paying, put her in this house and set her all up and everything. And she couldn't have her mom over for a cup of tea. And her mom kept saying, but it's my house too. I want to come over and visit you. She couldn't invite her over. So she finally hired a professional organizer without her mother's knowledge. And the woman came in and said, okay, well, put this in here. And she had all these bags put at the road for the trash person to take up. And after the professional organizer left, she went out and brought them all right back into the house. That's someone who doesn't understand ADHD. And frankly, doesn't understand organizing, to be honest. But I think it's sad that there's not more of you out there, because I look for ICD folks for some of my clients who need somebody local, because sometimes you just need somebody in the same room with you. You just really do.
Absolutely. That body doubling is
absolutely. Yeah.
So, I know it too.
Yeah. Exactly. Where are we going? I know we've been talking too long, so we have to go quick.
No. Okay. So let me ask you this, since my audience tends to be women 50 and over, and a lot of them are really just coming to this ADHD conversation.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I'm glad you asked that question, because as I described before, I was in denial for a while about it. And I thought, I can't have that. I also talked to, most of my women are over 50 as well. I say over 40 and better, I call them. But a lot of them are over 50, 60, 70, sometimes over 80. I have some clients who are over 80, one over 90. And I think, first of all, there's this, oh, so that's what it is. There's a sigh of relief. Mm-hmm. Then there's the anger of, why didn't I know this sooner? I could have done fill in the blank of 1,000 things I could have done, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's real sadness and grief at opportunities that were missed. But when I mentioned it to my mom, who at that point was over 50, she read my book and she goes, oh my God, you mean there's something else wrong with me? Mm-hmm. And so there's that feeling too, because a lot of us have been diagnosed with anxiety, or we've been diagnosed with depression, and who knows what came first, any of those kind of things that can happen, or bipolar, or any of that kind of stuff. And a lot of us have overcompensated because we have enough intelligence that we can kind of outthink the room until we hit 50. And that menopause stuff, just, as I said, I couldn't remember my own address, right? I could remember my husband's names, and I didn't call my dogs the right names, and they didn't mind, but my kids did. I mixed my kids' names up. So I think what I would say is that just take it one step at a time. And I know that it sounds kind of hokey, but well, that's an outused word, isn't it? Anyway, it sounds not kind of boring to me, but get educated. You're doing it right now. You are listening to this podcast. Mm-hmm. And, grandmas can be young, and grandmas can be great grandmas, right? They can be all that whole thing. And so I'm a grandma as well. I have a 16-year-old and an 11-year-old grandkiddos. And it was like, no, I don't want to be called grandma. So this is a little ADHD tributary, just warning you here. I'm going over here in the woods over here. Yeah. My mother's name was Virginia. My name is Linda, and I went by Linda when I was a kid. And she had a little calendar. My mom definitely was ADHD. She had a calendar that she wrote things down on, and she would write appointments for me for law appointment or VA, VA or LA. So my name for being a grandma is Lala.
Oh, I love it.
When my kids come here, then they say they're in La La Land.
Oh, I
And
love that.
and because my husband is not their genetic grandfather, he's faux pas.
I love it. Well, I have to tell you, I'm not a grandma.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I'm not a grandma. In fact, it's funny because I'm like, you can accuse me of having ADHD, but don't call me a grandma.
Exactly.
I'm not now. Quite honestly, I'm 55. My grandmother was a grandmother at 47. I'm clearly old enough to be a grandma, but my oldest child is 24. So, and my youngest is 17.
Yeah.
But I called it that. And even Dr. Nadeau said, I love the name. So it's just super catchy and people remember it. But I'm not a grandma. I just have to put that disclaimer out there. But
yeah, that's fine. We won't hate you for it. We will still let you be part of the club.
I aspire. I would be the saddest thing in the world if I didn't get to be a grandma with ADHD.
I got it.
So appreciate that you came on. There was something that I was going to say. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So, one of the things that I think, and I'm also very spiritual and woo-woo, and I think that there's a reason that I have ADHD, and I truly, truly believe that I was called to do the work that I am doing. Yeah. And I believe that we are, who we are in the body that we're in with the soul that we have to do whatever we're supposed to do. And maybe all that is to show your grandchildren grace of getting through adversity and accepting yourself, whole and complete, and giving yourself that grace and showing them, it's okay. And I will say the reason that I think people with ADHD are so resilient, I know this is for me, is that I'm making so many mistakes on a day-to-day basis. If I'm beating myself up about it, so I just go with it. I'm just like, oh, maybe I don't like these floors, but here they are. You know what I'm saying? I live with the decisions because the decisions are, as you know, hard enough.
Yeah.
It's good enough. So
Absolutely. It broke my heart when my then 14-year-old granddaughter, I said, well, maybe she might have been 15, but I said, so where are you thinking about going to college? What do you want to do? She goes, oh, I'm not smart enough to go to college. I'll never get into college. And I said, so what goes on at school? She goes, well, I study for the test, but then the test happens and I can't even remember anything I studied for. And I'm like, classic ADHD. You don't think her parents will allow her to be evaluated? No, because they don't want that stamp on her forehead of ADHD. And it breaks my heart because the best thing that we can do if you are diagnosed with ADHD and you still have girls living at home is to get them evaluated if you recognize it then. And a lot of times it works the other way, just as you said. A lot of times the kiddos are diagnosed and then mom or dad are diagnosed or whomever. But
and now I see my grandma had ADHD and, So
and my dad did too. So it came from both sides. And the other piece that was genetic was depression. My mom started on antidepressants when I was 9 and took them until the day she died when she was 92. So, and she was probably in her late 30s, early 40s when she started taking antidepressants. My dad had depression, but he wouldn't take those depression pills because they're too expensive. Like, duh, it's so. But now I look back and I see so much of me and my dad in me, and realizing how difficult things were and how misunderstood he felt so much of his life, and that's what breaks my heart. So back to your question about newly diagnosed or recent or suspect that you might have ADHD, be grateful because this opens new doors. And when you work through all those emotions of grief and sadness and anger and all that stuff, it's just like, this is who I am. And I think the hardest piece of having to deal with being newly diagnosed are other people who don't believe you. You couldn't have ADHD because you have a PhD. You couldn't have ADHD because you had your own business. Well, you have an IQ of 163. You couldn't have ADHD. Well, there's something called twice exceptional, and you can have ADHD and be gifted and have a high IQ. And a lot of us got through on that being able to do this. But keep in mind that there are a lot of people just like us who are not listening to this podcast, who are still suffering because they think it's all their fault. That if something goes wrong, all the guilt comes and all the blame comes to them. And there are many, many, many marriages that end because one partner or another, whoever the partners are, accusatory, critical, and beating someone down. And let's just stick with ADHD, but because there's a lot of things that can go with that. I still take antidepressants, by the way, and I don't take ADHD medication. But I know that there are people out there that are feeling so bad about themselves because that person that they live with or someone in their family continues to say, you're stupid. Why are you doing it this way? You're so careless. You're so clumsy. You're so fill in the blank. And they take that on as very personally, and they don't know how to get out of that. And that's one of the reasons that even though the research is not extended much beyond young women in their 30s, the suicide ideation and the suicide rate among ADHD young women is much, much higher than it is in the general population. And suicide ideation means I'm just thinking about, I don't want to be around, not necessarily having a plan. And women don't usually use guns. So I don't want to trigger anybody here, but I just want you to know that even though you see a lot on like all the social media people like, oh, it's like, oh, isn't this fun? I forget this and I forget that. Isn't that silly? But this is deadly serious. It is deadly serious in a lot of levels, and not just what I just mentioned. It's serious because ADHD people tend to be more overweight. Therefore, they tend to have more heart problems. Therefore, they tend to have more, they don't exercise as much because consistency, we don't want to exercise every day. I'll do it for 1 week and then I'll forget about it kind of thing. So
medical compliance.
Exactly.
My car used to be so dinged until I had ADHD awareness. My car was dinged up. Now I'm realizing I have to slow down, just
Absolutely.
so many ways that you're right. ADHD. And I don't mean to make light of it. What I am trying, and you have not implied that, by the way, what I am
I didn't mean you.
no. What I'm trying to do is say to people, yes, this exists. Yes, it can be a struggle. Yes, it's been there your whole life, but now that you know better, how do you do better? And that's really what I am trying to do. And so, Linda, this has been amazing. And you've got so much energy. And it's funny because listening to you talk reminds me of me, because I'm just like, and I have to tell you just really quick, other short story. My first marriage, my ex-husband couldn't keep up with me. And I didn't know that I had ADHD. And I'm just like, what's wrong with you? Like, why do you need so much rest? My boyfriend now is 9 years younger, and he can't keep up with me. But now I know it's me. It's me. It's not him. So
exactly right.
Anybody to have, and I have to say, I love my hyperactivity. I love my energy level. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But anyway,
people used to say to me, I love your energy, or I love the way your brain works. And I thought, what do you mean my brain works? Like, this is the only brain I know how to use. So I didn't know what to do about it. And I just want to say one thing in closing, and that is that I just enumerated a lot of things that are not good about ADHD. Shorter lifespan, more accidents, more unplanned pregnancies, all that stuff that you can read. And yet we needed the research to make ADHD legitimate, because otherwise insurance wouldn't be covering it unless it was a legitimate diagnosis, right? But what I would come out of ADHD conferences after listening to, and with all due respect to all the work, that amazing work that he's done, but Dr. Russell Barkley has a tendency to be a little negative about ADHD. And I love him to pieces. I've had him on many times on the Palooza, but I sometimes feel like I walk out of there and it's like, is there any hope for me? I mean, feel like slitting my wrist or something, not literally, but finally what I realized, surely there's something good about me and all of the rest of us sitting here. And that's why I created the AD Diva Network, because what I know is that we need each other. And we need each other to feel normal, to feel like it's just ADHD, and to know that we can laugh and we can cry together, and that it's going to be okay in the long run. And when one of us stumbles, we're there to pick each other up.
I love it. We absolutely thrive in community. So please let everybody know how they can find you and ADD Diva.
Yeah. AD Diva is ADDIVA.net. And I said diva because we have to have things our way, but it's not because we're being so self-righteous. It's because we have ADHD and we need things this way and this way in order to stand upright, kind of thing. So ADDIVA.net, but you can find the Paloozas at ADHDpalooza.com. And we now do the women's, it happens in the early spring, and the couples happens in the late fall. And we're getting ready to do one about an ADHD menopause Palooza coming up in next year or so.
Nice. Well, I would love to be added to that.
Yes, we will add you right now to that list.
Awesome.
All right.
I'm so great. We bumped into each other. I reached out to you.
Literally.
We literally bumped into each other at the conference, and I'm like, you have to be on my podcast. So thank you for doing it. And I think that you are an inspiration to women that shows you that you can live this amazing life with ADHD. Yes, there are negatives, but we're all about embracing the positive, because we really get to make the rest of our life the best of our life. So
Yeah, we do.
with that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jami.
The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.